My Wife's Movie Club watched Young Frankenstein, the 1974 Gene Wilder and Mel Brooks film, which is a parody and spoof of the Son of Frankenstein, the Frankenstein movie franchise, and horror movies in general from the 1930s. The horror melodrama style is recreated or imitated with comedic exaggerations, some pop culture references, and a lot of vulgar puns, innuendos, slapstick, and sexual references. Yet it is also a detailed recreation of the style, story, and setting of those early Frankenstein movies. There is even accounts of original set pieces from Frankenstein movies used in this film, making it not only a parody, but maybe an homage. Mel Brooks once said, "All my movies are serious, they're not dramatic. That's the difference." Assuming Mel Brooks was being honest and he considers Young Frankenstein one of his movies, then it would be interesting to identify the serious topic the movie has for us. The story of Frankenstein has often been interpreted as a moral tale, warning us of the dangerous knowledge and unbridled ambition, the consequences of playing God, the terrifying scientific advances that are beyond our control, and or the unethical behavior resulting from Pandora's box being opened. More apt is the question of who is more of the monster, Victor Frankenstein or his creation. What is the role of family and what are the consequences of alienation? When Young Frankenstein was made, all of these themes still exist, but the focus is on the creative power. Mel Brooks seems to be paralleling the Frankenstein ideas and humorously applying them to human intimacy, sex, or procreation. As if to say Frankenstein's ethics are ours when we give in to our throbbing biological urges. He does this in a humorous, yet vulgar way. The film starts with Frederick Frankenstein, essentially a parody of the Son of Frankenstein, as a smart and sophisticated doctor of science, teaching a lecture on involuntary and voluntary responses. Frederick shows the class that he tapped into the central nervous system and discovered how to control the system to take away the involuntary effects. However, the pain of the subject's eyes tell us a slightly different story. During the lecture, Dr. Frankenstein's tempers flare, resulting in self-harm. He stabs himself in the leg with a scalpel. And we question if his temper was involuntary or voluntary. Can he or we control ourselves, and for how long and under what conditions? Can we respect a man who has accomplished so much in his field, who also has an illogical, emotionally driven, and possibly involuntary primitive side to him? To further the discussion, Frederick has inherited the Frankenstein estate and must go to Transylvania. At this point, we are introduced to his fiancée, Elizabeth. As he leaves the station, saying goodbye to her, there is no kissing, no hugging, and not anything that would disturb her fingernails. This is more sad to me than funny, but it's delivered in a non-threatening and somewhat comedic way. In Transylvania, he meets Inga, played by Terry Garr, who, in contrast to Elizabeth, delivers every line with a sexual context. Her first appearance starts with a sexual innuendo about rolling in the hay. It seems innocent enough, but as the movie continues, her innuendos become more intentional. A quick example is when Frederick Frankenstein is helping her from the carriage and notice the very large door knockers being used by Igor. And when he says, "What knockers?" she responds with a flirty, bashful, "Oh, thank you." It is crass, and to me it's not very funny, but it's consistent with her eager, passionate, and seemingly available sexual nature. She is a temptation to Frederick, and she is in direct contradiction to Elizabeth. The temptation is ever present for Dr. Frankenstein, and finally he does succumb to her proposals. Like his initial lecture, he is a man of science, but sometimes his baser self takes over and he becomes out of control. Yet, notice as soon as Elizabeth comes back, he fawns over her, he reverts to his old logical and devoted self. In a world so full of sexual temptation and an ever-present offer of movies and magazines, etc., where the only restraint is self-restraint, we can empathize with Dr. Frankenstein. Similarly, once he finds himself in the Frankenstein castle, where he is easily lured into the laboratory, he makes the preparations to reanimate dead tissue, which is the thing he previously was against. When failure occurs in his impulsive yet deliberate endeavor, he loses his appetite and depression sets in. While stating that he retains his composure with quiet grace, he is only reinvigorated by the success of the reanimation, which again is a thing that he vigorously decried previously. Is he in control? Is this all voluntary? In the original Frankenstein story, Victor is immediately disgusted by his creation. He abandons the infant monster to fend for itself. And the result is a monster, a mistreated, abandoned, intelligent, but ugly creation who has received nothing but contempt from humanity. In Young Frankenstein, we see much more compassion and care, and less abandonment and regret. While being afraid of him, he does not attempt to destroy the monster, but to fix him. And he uses himself to fix the monster's brain chemistry. He takes the parental approach and is changed in the process. The sci-fi horror question would be, was the change good or bad? Now that the conflict has been resolved, the movie takes us back to the sex. Instead of learning a cautionary tale about using the creative powers, the question between can I do something or should I do something, the film suggests that the use of sex or the creative power is ultimately fun and good, regardless of the outcome. Even when it looks bad, the women rejoice with sweet mystery of life, at last I found you.
So this movie seems to say that creation is both involuntary and voluntary, and that you are going to succumb to it eventually. I thought the point of creation or invention was to take chaos and bring order. But Mel Brooks seems to say that creation, involuntary or voluntary, is chaos. You can fight it, but you will not defeat it. You can only temper it by making it a part of yourself. Or maybe I missed the point, being distracted by the Mel Brooks humor. Maybe it is more about investing oneself in another, or responsibilities that come from giving birth to something.
When I was younger, I categorized two types of comedy styles which I thought was worth labeling, the Mel Brooks movies and the Abrams, Zucker and Zucker movies. Both of them had a style about them that was easily recognizable, and there were other styles of comedies, of course, that I was familiar, but these two stuck out. Watching Young Frankenstein, I can't help but compare the styles of these movie makers. Some of the same jokes were told. When Mel Brooks does the joke, I cringe, but when Abrams, Zucker and Zucker do the jokes, I laugh.
What knockers!
Oh, thank you, Doctor.
Oh, that's all right. There we are.
Yeah?
Mimi du jour?
Yeah.
I'm Lieutenant Drebin. This is Captain Hawken, Police Squad.
Is this some kind of bust?
Yes, it's very impressive, but we'd just like to ask a few questions.
My personal taste has always favored the Abrams, Zucker and Zucker style, but Mel Brooks comedies are fun too. With all of the Mel Brooks films, there is some fun, but a lot of uncomfortable, inappropriate, and awkward jokes, and in my opinion, a lot of really stupid and poorly conceived jokes. When the fun and the humor outweighs the other stuff, it makes the film worth watching. But for some reason, that isn't always the case. For example, Men in Tights was ultimately a failure for me when I saw it, because to me, it was more cringe than funny or clever. But Young Frankenstein, for me, is worth watching. It's a good film. Gene Wilder is great. In every respect, he is the best part of this movie. Better than any of the jokes, plot line, and clearly he has put everything into this role. A close second might be Igor, who delivers the best punchlines in the movie. So what did you think? Did I get it right, or do I just not have the right sense of humor? Let me know.
Class is dismissed.